I just got laid off from my job, which is a bummer. But I haven't had much time to be sad because I've been busy crafting. My mom has been generously helping me look for work, and she just stumbled on a local maker's market accepting applications. It's always been a goal of mine to have my own booth at a craft fair or artist alley, and I definitely have some spare time right now, so of course I immediately jumped at the chance to sign up. There's just one problem. I don't currently have anything to sell. Normally this would completely disqualify an applicant from signing up for a fair, but my mom's communication skills are excellent and she explained my situation. And surprisingly, it worked. My mom and I have successfully reserved our own table, with the caveat that we need to provide photo evidence of our wares sooner rather than later. So now it's time for me to do what I do best, craft like there's no tomorrow so I don't show up to the market with cobwebs and a dead dream. The market is going to be in September, so luckily I have lots of time to build up stock. The issue at hand is that I'm starting from complete scratch without even an idea of what to sell. After some brainstorming, I landed on the general theme of fall decorations and accessories. The goal for the end of the video is to have prototypes for 3 categories of products that I can photograph and send to the event coordinator. We don't have any time to waste, so let's get started. The first craft I'm going to try is yarn pumpkins. The materials I used for this project are a toilet paper roll, which you can cut to make 2 pumpkins, cinnamon sticks, which again can make several pumpkins from 1 stick, a hot glue gun already plugged in and ready to go, extra large chunky yarn, mine is in this butterscotch color but you can choose any color you want for your yarn, and finally a pair of scissors. To begin the project, I start by cutting the toilet paper roll in half. We're only using 1/2 for now, so you can set the other one to the side. Then, I start making tiny snips with the scissors all around the edge of the toilet paper roll. The snips should be pretty shallow and definitely shouldn't go all the way to the other side. You can see in the video the spacing I'm using. I would honestly recommend putting them a little bit closer together. Mine ended up being a bit chunky for my taste. Once you've created the cuts on one side of the roll, flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. The cuts don't need to line up, so don't worry about that. When all of the cuts are done, you're going to take the little flaps that you've created and fold them down toward the center of the roll. The point of this step is to create more of a pumpkin shape from the start rather than a tube or cylinder. Repeat the same step on the other side, and then your roll is ready. Now we can move on to cutting the yarn. This part is pretty easy. I just take a little less than an arm span's worth of yarn, or about 5 feet, and I cut there. Once we have our length of yarn cut, we're ready to adhere the yarn to the inside of the tube. To do this, I add a dab of hot glue to the inside of the tube and then attach the yarn to the glue. Be cautious when you're working with hot glue because it is hot enough to burn your fingers if you're not careful. With the yarn attached to the inside of the roll, we can begin winding the yarn around the edge of the tube. I just continuously feed the yarn through the center hole and wrap it around and around to create the classic pumpkin shape. I'll speed this part up a bit because I'm guessing you already get the idea. One trick to keep in mind is to push the strands of yarn really close together so we don't see any of the toilet paper roll underneath peeking out. When it looks like the roll is completely covered, I would actually recommend adding a loop or 2 extra just to make sure it's really tightly packed. Finally, when you're satisfied with your pumpkin, there might be a little bit of excess yarn, but feel free to trim it and you can just leave a little tail peeking out. We'll take care of that in just a second. Now we're going to shift our focus to the stem of the pumpkin using the cinnamon sticks. Each stick can provide a stem for multiple pumpkins, so I just cut them down to shape. To do this, I use the scissors to file a notch in the cinnamon stick. This notch will tell the stick where we want it to break, and then you can apply a little bit of pressure and it should be a clean break. Now we'll apply a dab of hot glue to the inside of the pumpkin and then carefully insert the stick. The glue should seal the inside of the pumpkin pretty well, especially if you apply it liberally. So now you can feel free to trim any excess yarn that was peeking out of the top. And your pumpkin is complete! The next craft I'm going to try is decorative potion bottles. There are a few key materials that are needed for this project, and I'm going to list them off now. First, and probably most importantly, you need distilled water. It's important that it says distilled on the bottle because we don't want any minerals in the water that could potentially grow mold. Next, isopropyl alcohol can come in handy because it doesn't evaporate as quickly as water does, so this can be part of the base of the potion to make it last longer. For the potions, you'll of course need decorative glass bottles of your choice, which can be found in any craft store. Liquid food coloring can be used to color the potions, and beads can be used as decorative fillers. To make the potion shimmery, you're going to need some really fine glitter or mica powder. I bought a bunch of different colors of mica powder so I could experiment with different color combinations of potions, and I bought other larger glitters that I could use to decorate as well. I've also set down a paper towel because potion making involves liquids and liquids can easily spill. I'm going to try to mitigate the spillage by pouring the liquid over a straw, which is a little trick I can show you in a second, so that's why I have a straw with me. And finally, I have a plastic butter knife, which I'm using to scoop the mica powder into the bottle. This is also something you can use a popsicle stick for. Alright, let's make a potion. So I'm going to be using this bottle here, and we're going to start by just putting some accent pieces into the bottle. I have this little fake plant, it's just made of plastic, and then I have some beads here. I think I'll put the beads in first. These are just clear ones. I think I'm gonna go for maybe an underwater sort of theme, so I'm thinking these are bubbles, and this could be sea moss or something of the sort. So I'm just gonna uncork the bottle and start putting the beads in. Okay, perfect. So we have some bubbles in the bottom, and then I will put the seagrass in. I'm not gonna really bother attaching it to the bottom. I think it's just big enough that, like, you know, it won't really shake around that much, like it's not gonna come loose or anything like that. So I just think this looks really nice so far. It really looks like an underwater sort of scene, and then the bubbles should be able to freely move as well. So now we're gonna move on to the messy part. So I have several napkins down here because this is going to get potentially messy. There might be some spilling, but I'm gonna try and be as clean as possible. So I'll put the bottle on the napkin. I'm going to insert the straw here to make sure we can pour it in properly. I'm going to start with the isopropyl alcohol, and I'll fill it up probably halfway with the alcohol, and then we will put the pigment in and we'll fill the rest up with water. The key for this is usually to press the lip of the isopropyl alcohol bottle into the straw first, and then start pouring. So let me see if I can do it the other way so you can see better. So kind of like this, press it, and then pour. Okay, so it is now full halfway to the top with the isopropyl alcohol. There was a little bit of spillage, but that's why we do it on the towel. I'm going to take the straw out, and then we're going to start putting the food coloring inside the bottle. So I want to go with an underwater kind of theme, so I'll go with green and blue. Let's try 1 drop of blue. That looks really cool. And then we'll do 1 drop of green. I really like how it looks before the coloring actually settles, like you can kind of see it floating. But now we just kind of want to mix it up. I'll just give it a swish. Ooh, that looks so cool. I love this color. This kind of oceany color. And we are going to fill the rest up with water, so don't worry that it's not full yet. But here's how it's looking. Really cool. Alright, so let's add our pigment. I was going to add some glitter to this one, but I don't think it needs it. I'm going to put the glitter away. So I'm going to open my pigment carefully. This will spill everywhere, so just be careful. Yeah, this one's like shimmery white. Not super pearlescent, but I'll try it just because I want
some sort of silvery white shimmer. So I'm going to take a little bit of scoop with my knife and then dump it in. So I'm going to cap this with my thumb and mix it around and see what we're working with here. I think this is definitely it. So I'm going to use the straw again. I just prefer it to spilling everywhere. Alright, fill it up almost to the top. There we go. That looks perfect. Take the straw out. And here she is. Look at our potion. This is so cool. I love this project. I'm having such a good time. It's really messy, so be warned. You will have powder all over everything. You will have water and alcohol all over the desk, so just be careful with that. Alright, so here's where we are at with the potion. I don't think it needs more pigment. I think it's perfectly pigmented. I think it's really pretty. It's very murky but kind of oceany. And then there are the bubbles on the bottom, or the beads. So I'm really happy with this. I'm going to cork it up.
This is where things started to go off the rails, because I could not figure out how to properly cork these bottles so that it was a watertight seal. At first I tried just sealing them with hot glue, but that did not work at all. I would not recommend that. The water kept spilling out constantly. And then I tried the E6000 contact adhesive. That didn't work either. It just kind of came apart eventually. So I finally landed on sealing the corks inside the bottles using UV resin. I applied a good amount of resin to the corks and placed them inside the bottle, and because the bottle is clear, my UV light was able to cure the resin inside. Also, an important note for working with any kind of resin: make sure to wear gloves. Don't do what I did. Don't get resin on your hands. It's not good to get on your skin, or especially in your eyes, and it's not good to breathe it in either. So make sure to do it in a well-ventilated area or wearing a respirator. Once I figured out how to properly seal the bottles, I created 6 unique potions and also applied my own custom labels to each bottle, and we ended up with these ones. Now that the potion bases are done, they are ready to be decorated. I have a variety of materials that I can use for decoration, and most of the decorations are going to be applied with hot glue. I spent quite a bit of time wrapping all of the necks of the bottles in yarn or leather, and then adding decorative charms to the side. These potions are all unique, so I just ended up using whatever I had lying around and whatever I thought fit the theme for each potion. For a few of them, I also created my own custom bows using leftover ribbon. When the necks of the bottles were all wrapped, I moved on to my favorite part, which was melting wax over the top of the corks. I have 3 different colors of sealing wax: green, red, and gold, and I used a heat gun to heat up the wax so that it would drip over the corks. I definitely don't think this is the best way to do it, because the heat gun would also blow air at the wax, which kind of blew it everywhere occasionally, but in the end I was able to get it to work pretty well. I used the gun to heat up the wax, and then I poured a generous amount of wax over the top of each bottle. I also bought my own seal. It has a little picture of a mushroom on it, and I placed the seal on top of the hot wax to create an imprint of the design. I did this 6 times, once for each bottle, and when all of them were finally done, I was able to step back and admire my handiwork. This was the hardest project that I did, and it ended up being really frustrating at times, but I also thought it was the most rewarding. I think out of all of the 6 potions I made, one of the coolest is the illumination potion, which actually glows in the dark. I was able to achieve this effect using glow-in-the-dark pigment and glitter, and I think it came out really cool. For the final project, I decided to do some jewelry, namely earrings. I started this project by picking out some beads from my large collection of assorted random beads that I had just lying around the house. I have 2 main storage containers for the beads, so I went through both of them and just picked out any beads that I thought would be relatively fall-inspired, or things that I thought would make a good pair of earrings. I definitely didn't end up using all of the beads that I picked out because I only made 4 pairs, but I liked the variety that I had in the end. When it came to actually making the earring designs, I put in probably more work than I should have. But to be fair, I have qualms with just sticking an earring hook on a pre-made charm and then calling that my own design. If I'm making these earrings to sell, I want to actually have some hand in making them and not just attaching a hook to a charm. That being said, I think I went a little bit overboard with some of these because they took me quite a long time to complete. The first pair I decided to make were these acorn earrings, and to spice it up, I decided to do some wire wrapping. This was my first time attempting to do wire wrapping, so it took me a little while to get the hang of it, but eventually I was able to figure out what I wanted to do. I wrapped the acorn in various gauges of gold-colored copper wire, and added some small beads around the wire to make the design more interesting. For the bottom of the acorn, I also created a separate little dangly hook using more wire and a couple extra beads just to add more interest. After the first acorn was complete, I copied the design to the second acorn and I attached the earring hooks. And then my first pair of earrings was complete. The second pair of earrings utilized this wooden bead that I thought was vaguely pumpkin-shaped, so I rolled with that, and I also utilized some green-colored copper wire for this design as well. I created a loop in the wire that the earring hook would eventually attach to, and I strung the rest of the wire through the bead. For the loose bits of wire hanging out of one side of the bead, I decided to make one of them a leaf, and the other one a little curlicue vine. For the leaf, I just took a leaf bead and a small green bead and attached it to the end of the wire and looped it at the very end so the beads wouldn't fall off. For the vines, I just used my pliers to wind the wire up so it created a little curlicue. Once my mini pumpkins were done, I attached the earring hooks and the earrings were ready to go. By the time I got to the third pair of earrings, I was growing a little tired of using wire, so I decided to switch it up and just keep it really simple. I selected 3 beads, I put them on a gold wire stud, I added a little loop at the top, and then added the earring hook, and it was that easy. This design was also kind of inspired by a pumpkin, or maybe a tomato because the bead was so red. And out of all of the earrings I made, I actually liked the look of this one the most. Ta-da! Earring number 3 complete. For the fourth and final pair of earrings, I wanted to stick with the theme of keeping it simple yet interesting. I really wanted to do something with these glass mushroom beads, so I decided to add them to a little wire peg and add a green ribbon. I tied the ribbon into a bow and super glued it down so that it wouldn't go anywhere. After trimming up the ribbon a little bit and adding an earring hook, this design was also complete. Yay, mushrooms! After all the hard work, here are the final 4 pairs of earrings in all their glory. Enjoy! After all of the projects were finally complete, I was a little bit surprised at what I learned. I really thought the more intricate projects were going to keep my interest more, but in the end, I actually liked the simpler ones better. For example, the red earrings were the simplest to make, and they ended up being my favorite. And I thought I was going to like the potion bottles way better than making the yarn pumpkins, but it was the complete opposite. Sometimes a craft can just be simple yet effective, and especially if I'm going to be selling some of these items, it'll be good to have something that I can churn out without too much pressure. But with all that said, I'm still really proud of all the things I made, and I had a great time experimenting and trying some fall crafts. So until the Maker's Market rolls around, I'm just gonna keep on crafting, and I hope I will see you in the next video.